my name is Samantha, and I'm going to jump right into this PowerPoint and share with you how I was influenced to study wildlife management as a part of my master's degree. To begin with, I've had a lot of amazing opportunities in my life to experience wildlife around the world. My personal experience is the best foundation for conservation, and maybe the only foundation. I found it to be true that we care for only what we love only what we know, and we truly know only what we experience. As part of my scientific experiences, I've counted tree lizards and coqui frogs in Puerto Rico, studied fiddler crabs in the marshes of Delaware, and surveyed for goshawk in the mountains of North Idaho. Additionally, during my semester studying abroad, I was able to experience the amazing wildlife of New Zealand. The video shows New Zealand fur seal pups at daycare at Ojai Falls near Kaikoura. It also shows the world's only alpine parrot, the kea, near Milford Sound, and a family of the flightless bird species weka crossing a hiking path near Franz Josef Glacier. I was so fortunate to have my camera to capture these moments interacting with wild creatures in their native habitat. Every wildlife encounter I've had so far has only increased my anticipation for the next one. Even that time I faced down a mountain lion, and I could tell it was thinking I might make a good lunch. As I'm sure you all know, coming face to face with a wild animal is an exhilarating and humbling experience, and not one you'll soon forget. In fact, the love that people have for wildlife, specifically what we might call charismatic megafauna, was perhaps the most important influence in bringing about the environmental conservation laws that exist in America today. In 1973, Congress decided to protect the beloved and threatened wildlife species of America by passing the Endangered Species Act. This act has had a profound and lasting impact on environmental conservation in our country. I think the language of this bill is so powerful and inspiring. I'll just read the best parts. The Congress finds and declares that various species of fish, wildlife, and plants in the United States have been rendered extinct as a consequence of economic growth and development untempered by adequate concern and conservation, and that other species of fish, wildlife, and plants have been so depleted in numbers that they are in danger of or threatened with extinction, and that these species of fish, wildlife, and plants are of aesthetic, ecological, educational, historical, recreational, and scientific value to the nation and its people. The Act goes on to pledge the United States to conserve and safeguard, for the benefit of all citizens, the nation's heritage in fish, wildlife, and plants. And if that isn't an indication of the power that this Act has, it is further declared to be the policy of Congress that all federal departments and agencies shall seek to conserve endangered species and threatened species, and shall utilize their authorities in furtherance of the purposes of this Act. The Endangered Species Act essentially made endangered species conservation a main priority of every federal department and agency. The immense power of the Act has been upheld by judges and courts for decades, and has reshaped the priorities of our nation towards environmental conservation in a way that I'm sure the Congress of the time could not have predicted. It seems that wildlife, more wonderful and strange than we can know, bring us all together in a common cause. Protecting them through the Endangered Species Act currently stands as a strong foundation for most of our environmental regulations and laws. Unfortunately, the power of the Act has also been opposed and resented by certain special interest groups, and its future is currently very uncertain. Soon after the Endangered Species Act passed, President Reagan led a charge against increased government regulation in environmental matters and appointed a known anti-environmentalist as Secretary of the Interior, which controls national parks and other land management agencies. As a result, the ESA was barely enforced for almost a decade. Currently, we're seeing another surge of the same anti-environmental regulation attitude. President Trump plans to cut funding to the Environmental Protection Agency by 24%. More specifically, Congress has big plans for reducing the influence and power of the Endangered Species Act. One of the reforms will change the language of the Act to prioritize basic human needs over those of endangered species. The irony of this change is undeniable. In case you were wondering if this is really that bad, the former U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Director and the current President and CEO of Defenders of Wildlife insists that the Endangered Species Act does not need congressional modification, only sufficient funding. He said that of the 130 legislative proposals introduced last Congress, which were aimed at updating the Endangered Species Act, not a single one would have improved species conservation. He also said that in his experience, the call for modernization of the Endangered Species Act has almost always been an attempt to weaken its ability to conserve imperiled species. The exact nature of these proposed changes are still unknown. Nonetheless, given the current composition of the Senate and the popularity of the Trump administration's promises to prioritize development and reduce environmental regulation, the future of the Endangered Species Act as a powerful force for environmental protection is decidedly uncertain. It's obvious that this lack of understanding about ecosystems and environmental conservation is more widespread than I would have believed before last year. Our elected officials constantly ask, how valuable is that species? Why should we save it? People do not understand or do not accept the importance of protecting biodiversity in all its forms. This ignorance is dangerous to our future. Those of us who understand and appreciate the complexity of biotic integrity need to stand up and be a voice for animal and plant species which have no voice. I hope that by studying wildlife management, I can be a more effective advocate for the strange and wonderful wildlife on our planet. Their intrinsic value must be preserved and not allowed to wink out of existence. As the great conservationist Aldo Leopold said, the last word of ignorance is the man who says of an animal or plant, what good is it? Thank you for sticking with me through my presentation. I hope I have given you a better idea of my convictions and motivations to study wildlife.